Good morning and welcome to Mayor's Weekly. We're pleased to have you with us this morning. And joining me today is Keith Pike, our city planner. And a word about city planners. City planners in general are unsung heroes. And generally what you see in municipalities across this country, you see somebody taking credit for some project, something big has happened, and if a city planner hadn't been involved, then it would probably never happen, and very rarely do they get the credit that they're due for making things happen. And certainly Keith's contribution to this city has been huge for a long time, and I'm glad he's doing what he does every day. We could spend far more time than we have this morning talking about the duties, responsibilities, job description, whatever you might want to call it, of a city planner, but we won't do that. I think what can be informative is talking about some of the things that Keith is working on, and it'll give you some insight as to what a city planner does every day. And Keith, maybe we kick it off. Just yesterday afternoon, you and I had a conversation about sidewalk project that's in the mill for downtown Jasper, and we talk about Wi-Fi and things that when you're going to do sidewalks, certain things you can do that are preparatory to having Wi-Fi. We don't have it. Just a little overview about that, and then we'll talk about some other projects.
Well, we're on our fifth phase of the downtown sidewalk projects, and of course the last couple of phases we've actually been putting conduit in for running fiber for Wi-Fi for the future. We hope to be able to cover the entire downtown area, and at some time in the future be able to provide that to the citizens of Jasper.
Well, Keith, we do this in the big picture. The cost of doing this is token, is it not?
It is, and the time to do it is why we're in construction, because if you try to go back and do it afterwards, it's just going to be a mess.
And if it's never used, then it's just never used. But like I told somebody yesterday, you can't unpour concrete.
You cannot.
You put the conduit there, and who knows, the way things are evolving in the world we're living in, there could be another use. There could be multiple uses. So we're doing that, so we'll be prepared to do the things that I think we're going to have an opportunity to do relative to Wi-Fi. Keith, another thing that you spent a substantial amount of time on and still spending time on it, and you and I shared our excitement about what's going on in the residential construction business.
Well, I do have a few notes on those. We're experiencing more residential growth than we've seen in a long time, especially since 2007. Blackwell Meadows off of Blackwell Dairy Road, they are looking to do a next phase on it. I would think probably about 40 more lots. That won't be the end of it. There'll be more after that. Of course, on 20th Avenue, their Viking development is looking at possibly developing about 175 lots there for residential. Of course, we've got, and those are more patio garden home type developments. Of course, we still got the Brooks subdivision that has lots available. We're seeing some activity there as well for conventional style homes, and as well as multifamily. We've got a development that's about to start on Highway 69 North. It's just outside the city limits, but it's multifamily apartments, approximately 64 units. We hope to be able to annex that into the city, and that would, fill another housing need that we really need in Jasper.
Keith, let's dig into that just a little bit about your role in making that happen. We'll just be a little cryptic here. Developer A is looking at Jasper for a residential development. how does that start, and how do you come into play, Keith?
Well, and it's according to what kind of development they're wanting to do. If they're wanting to do garden homes, whatever, there's certain zoning for it. If they're wanting to do conventional style, there's a zoning district for it. Make sure the zoning's correct. Once that's in place, the developer would submit a preliminary plat and construction plans for the subdivision. It shows the preliminary layout, and of course the construction plans show the the alignment of the roads horizontally and vertically, plus all the utilities. Once the Planning Commission approves that, they go to construction. They get everything put in place. I would say 90% of the improvements in, and they would come back with a final plat, which is basically the same as preliminary. Sometimes some of the lots change a little bit, usually not. Once the final plat's approval's given, they're free and clear to start selling lots and building houses.
Keith, you look after two boards, or provide the leadership for the meeting of two boards that come into play in some of these things. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, the Zoning Board of Adjustment is one of the boards that I'm staff for, and they hear things like variances and special exceptions. The variances usually being if somebody is building a house and can't meet setbacks or whatever, the zoning board has the latitude to grant that. And special exceptions they're heard on a case-to-case basis to allow things that are otherwise permitted but have to be reviewed on case-to-case. Planning Commission, staff to them as well. They hear rezonings, conditional uses. The rezoning process, we're kind of bound by state law on that. It's a pretty lengthy process, and of course we have to follow it, and we're going to follow it. And it's about a 2.5 month process to rezone property. They handle those, and also their sole authority over subdivisions. The rezonings, now they have to go to the council. The council would have the ultimate say in that, and they are solely advisory. But on subdivisions, they're sole authority.
Yeah. Keith's a very modest person. I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into that. When that hypothetical developer A comes to town, and the information that Keith has to compile and work with engineering companies and giving those folks guidance, and more times than not, you'll see a developer, I'm not being critical of developers, I'm glad to hear, their wants and expectations don't always align with the rules, do they?
Well, not always. And most of them are used to working in bigger cities, and they're kind of used to that. But sometimes they do ask for things, and there's not a lot of concessions we can make in some areas. But if they need some variances or whatever, we can send them to the zoning board and do it the right way.
Yeah. Keith, let's shift gears to retail, and 2 or 3 things going on here. We've talked about this several times here, and the work's underway for a new sporting goods store located in the old J.C. Penney's facility, and there's a great deal of work that had to go on there. Zoning was a piece of that work, was it not, Keith?
It was. Actually, it was a subdivision. They actually divided the property of J.C. Penney's away from the mall, and that, of course, had to go to the Planning Commission and was approved, and they've recorded that plat and probably done that transaction.
Another thing that had happened there at Sporting Goods, they cater to hunting and fishing, and I'm sure athletics, those sort of things that the entity that will occupy this facility had to have assurance that they could sell firearms and ammunition at this site, and zoning played a role in that. And on 2 different occasions, these folks called on Keith, and we wanted to accommodate them to provide information that certifying that they could sell ammunition, because those folks have to go upstream to the ATF, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, to get a license to sell firearms and ammunition and that sort of thing. If you if you'd had a city planner that was unresponsive or whatever, it could very well derail that project. But I know when those requests came in, Heath and I talked about it, and immediately we turned that information around the next day so they could go forward.
We write a lot of zoning letters. We have a lot of requests from potential developers and people doing due diligence for developers, and they want to know the zoning of the property, that their proposed use will be outright permitted use. And in that case, it was a little bit further. They wanted to know, or wanted the letter to state that they could sell firearms and ammunition.
Keith, we know that we're being looked at by maybe 2 retailers. One of them convenience store business, other and edibles, I guess, and it's not a grocery store. Let me say that, so I don't set sage grass field on fire. But let's just take not the convenience store, but those people have come to see you, and where do you start with those folks? What do you maybe they've identified a site? How have you handled that? They could give some insight to your work.
Well, generally the restaurant industry, they're going to be looking at Highway 78, and they'll identify some locations. Of course, we'll verify zoning. Most of Highway 78 will be conducive to any restaurant use. And they sit down with us. Sometimes they'll share who they are, sometimes they won't, and in this case they have not shared who they are. Sometimes I have a good idea who it is, but anyway, it is a national restaurant chain, and they identify the sites, and if it's an existing building, we'll tell them what they need to do to go forward, and if it's a raw piece of land, we certainly sit down with them and let them know exactly what we're looking for, and just try to assist them any way we can to make it easy for them to do business in Jasper.
And Keith, more times than not, and that's what we're here for, to serve the people, to promote commerce, that sort of thing. It's not these folks come to your office for 30 minutes and that's the end of it. Generally, it's multiple visits and multiple phone calls as you work to get them to where they need to be.
It is. The initial meeting, they'll go through most of what they want. They'll call back and ask questions, and probably visit us again, and hopefully we can cover everything in a couple of meetings. Sometimes it gets more in depth. It's just usually the scale of the project.
You look at real estate developers, you look at retail, the vast majority of the time, the first contact that those entrepreneurs have with the city of Jasper is with our city planner. And it's so important. We've always heard about first impressions, that we make the right impression, that it becomes obvious to that developer that we know what we're doing. It becomes obvious that we stand ready to help, because some of the things that we see, Keith, they could locate anywhere in the United States, could they not?
They can, and like I said, we try to make it easy to do business in Jasper as we can. We've got a job to do, and we're going to do that, but we try to help them along as best we can. Now,
Keith is located in our annex, which is on the north side of City Hall, and Keith works every day. I don't know if he ever takes vacation or not. He starts early and stays late, that sort of. But Keith is always on standby to help you, answer your questions, and I can't tell you how pleased I am to have a face, a voice, and a mindset that when people connect with Keith, they feel good about Jasper, because it makes a difference as we try to grow our city. And Keith, I thank you for that. And if you have questions, a visit or a call to Keith will either get you an answer or get you pointed in the direction where you can get what you need. So pleased to be with you today, and if you have questions, ideas, whatever, we always like to hear from you, and send them our way, and we'll provide an appropriate response. Look forward to being with you next week.